Wow, this is amazing. First of all, thank you to Bryce and to Robbie for having your crew here. Guys, I share a very similar story to all of you. I'm in recovery, and I've been in recovery for almost 3 years now. And which I'm happy to get into that story, but what I really want to talk about, actually, I was meeting with Jen yesterday, and we were talking about, where are we at, catching up after the holidays, seeing how everybody's doing. And I told him, I said, this time of year is actually really hard for me. Well, I did get sober in December, which is coming up. That's the month after November. The time leading up to this sobriety, I was in the worst shape of my entire life. And I know you all have been there. And I don't know what it felt like for you, but today I was finally able to connect. In fact, it was today, 3 years ago, that something happened that I'll share with you guys to kind of get this thing started. 3 years ago, I'd been relapsing for about 4 years, and I'd lost everything. Many, many times over, I'd lost everything. I used to be a pretty self-willed guy. I used to be able to solve my own problems and set my mind to something and make sure that it happened, and I did really, really well at that. But now I find myself suddenly in a situation alone in an apartment in Houston, and I've relapsed yet again. Methamphetamine, alcohol, the needle, the bottle, all that stuff. What had happened is I'd been seeing a therapist for about 4 years at that point, and she was so concerned about my relapsing that she had me sign a contract. Well, she asked me, do you want to sign a contract? And the contract stated that if she thought I was using, she would let my family know, and she would let my boss know, my employer. In other words, they were going to force me back into rehab, which I didn't want to do. So I signed the contract. I was like, yeah, whatever. Relapsed very shortly after that. And after a multi-day bender, I remember sitting on the edge of my bed and thinking, don't tell the truth. Just go back into the rooms, right? Exchange a wet chip for the dry chip. Don't go back to rehab, man. And I sat there and I thought, how many times have I been through this? How many times? What's going to be different this time? And I sat on the edge of my bed, and I closed my eyes. And I said out loud, God, I have no idea what to do. Why don't you show me what to do and give me the power to do it? If someone had told me what I'm telling you guys right now, I would have been like, oh God, here we go. Another Bible thumper, Jesus freak. Probably grew up in the church, and now he's here to shove this down my throat. That is not me at all. But what happened next is a very calm feeling came over me. And a very simple thought came to mind, and it said, ask for help. And that was it. I did everything that my therapist had outlined for me. I kept my promise. Unlike every other Navy SEAL on the planet, I'm not here to tell you how to fight addiction. I'm not here to tell you how to be strong and to go out there and win and be the Navy SEAL of your family or of your job or of sobriety. I'm here to tell you how to give up. Surrender. And I also believe in the power of vulnerability. Because another thing I'm going to do for you guys, I'm going to tell you my story, and it's not entirely unlike any other story you've ever heard, but what I promise you I will do is tell the truth, including about some of the grittier details, the embarrassing details of my story. Vulnerability is a superpower. We all have the ability to wield it. When I'm vulnerable, what I do is I create a safe space for other people to do the same thing. It's like I'm telling them, this is okay. This is you are okay to talk about what you want to talk about. So let's talk about it. But first, let's talk about skydiving. When I was in the SEAL teams, the words surrender and vulnerability were not in our vocabulary. We did cool stuff like this, like jump out of planes, shoot guns, blow stuff up, yada, yada, yada. And believe me, I am actually getting somewhere with this. So what kind of person does this? Like, why do we do this? I've met and have interacted with a lot of Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Special Forces, and we all have certain attributes in common. Some guys, they're overly patriotic. Serving their country to the highest regard is something that just appeals to them. Some guys have a call to adventure. Some guys like to challenge themselves. They come from families with unrelenting standards, and becoming a Navy SEAL is just the next rung on the ladder to greatness. I can tell you guys right now that is not why I became a Navy SEAL. In fact, if I draw it back far enough, there's actually two things that happened in my life that for some reason I'll never fully understand led me down that path. The first is when I got arrested, and the second is when I tried to kill myself. Believe it or not, this used to be me. I was cute once, all right? It get worse, trust me. I was born in Fort Smith, Arkansas, to two parents who I have no doubt loved my sister and me very much. But from my earliest memories can confirm that they did not like themselves very much at all. They fought constantly. My earliest memories of my parents were of them screaming at each other, my dad escaping to the room, nonchalant, completely checked out, and my mom crying on the phone. She took this for as long as she could and then packed up my sister and me, and we moved to Texas. When I moved to Texas, something was different. Something was different about me. You ever felt like you just kind of don't really fit in or belong? You ever felt like you're different than other people? That other people get the joke, that they know how to dress, they know the music to listen to, and you're just kind of acting it out and faking it? That's what I did. I had a ton of anxiety. I became a quitter. Anything that was difficult to me, I quit instantly. So I began isolating, and I turned to food for comfort. My mom was a single mom and very busy, so fast food was often on the dinner table. In turning to food for comfort, I gained a bunch of weight, and I started getting bullied and teased relentlessly. Something I learned for when you're getting bullied is it's good to have a friend group. So now about the time when I was in high school, I fell into the wrong crowd, right? The people that are not so much concerned about making good grades. They don't really care about their future. They can only live one paycheck to the next, from one party to the next. So I started doing the things they did. And I was driving around with them one night, red and blue lights flashed in the background. They pulled up right behind my car. My friends got to go home, and I went to jail. I was 17. When I got out of jail, the depression and the anxiety, which were almost debilitating, became just unbearable. I could barely get out of bed. I started having panic attacks. They treated me like a criminal in jail, but then my family treated me like a criminal too. And I was convinced that I was a total loser. I cleaned up my act a little bit, got into college, got good grades, but I couldn't shake that shame. I couldn't deal with the pain that I had felt inside. So one day, I got my hands on enough alcohol, as much as I possibly could, and I found a bottle of pills, and I tried to kill myself. Something interesting happens when there's a lot of pain. Pain can be a refining process. And for me, when I came out of a blackout and I was all by myself, I had this very subtle realization that quitting everything and being a coward and not stepping into difficult circumstances is what led me to suicide. So for the rest of my life, I can never quit anything ever again. I started doing difficult things and challenging myself little by little, not really knowing what direction I was going to go, until one day I read this book called Lone Survivor. If you haven't read the book, it's amazing. It's about a group of Navy SEALs who basically get ambushed by the Taliban. They call in a quick reaction force, people that fly in to save them. Everybody gets shot out of the sky and dies. Everybody on the ground dies, except one guy. At the time, it was the most horrific tragedy in naval special warfare history. Now, here's a guy, me, arrested at 17, just tried to kill myself, scared of my own shadow, reading this book about the heroics and the courage and the sacrifice. What I read was not descriptive of me. But I thought to myself, and roll with me on this, if I can do that, maybe I can become that. Maybe I won't be afraid anymore. And maybe I'll be okay. So I graduated college, joined the Navy. The next thing you know, I end up in Coronado, which is the proving grounds for every single Navy SEAL that has ever lived or ever will. Basic underwater demolition SEALs training is the hardest military training in the world, hands down. We had 150 guys starting off. Now, to get to that point, to get to day one, there's already a series of rigorous screening tests that you have to make it through. So if you got it that far, you should be good to go. But historically, about 80% don't make the cut. We started with 150. 4 weeks later, right before Hell Week is 5 days straight of nonstop activity, we had fewer than 90. And we had fewer than 40 coming out of Hell Week. And about 30 to 35 graduated. And I was one of those guys. If I left it at that, though, you guys would be like, wow, that's pretty cool. I'm not here to tell you about all my amazing successes. I'm here to tell you about my failures. There were 3 I struggled in buds. Oh my gosh. It just, you can't prepare for this stuff, right? So I'm going to share 3 failures that almost got me kicked out and completely shorted my career as a Navy SEAL. The first one is this thing called life-saving. To be a SEAL, they want to make sure you're comfortable in the water. The way they do that is they try to drown you. So they pounce on you, take you underwater. You have to stay calm, cool, and collected. Bring them to the edge of the pool and pull them out. We had 4 attempts. Most guys passed the first attempt. The rest passed the second attempt, except for me. It took me 4 attempts. 3 public failures, and then 1 random pass. I don't know what happened, but I don't know. Maybe the guy took it easy on me. So I passed that. Now it's time for the next evolution. Again, they want to make sure you're comfortable in the water. So how do they do that? They try to drown you. This time, they give us air to breathe, but it's a trap. You're not really going to breathe the air the entire time. You go underwater and you're crawling around, and then they swim down and they simulate a surf hit. They flip you over and over and over again. They rip your mask off. They rip your regulator off. They undo some ties or strings or whatever the case may be. And then when they're done, you're kind of like in the fetal position, trying to forget everything that happened in your life. You have to get back on your knees, very comfortably, calmly, coolly, go through a series of troubleshooting procedures. 4 attempts. I failed all 4 of them. In BUDS training, you're allowed 1 rollback. What a rollback is, it's like being held back in school, right? You failed first grade, you got to be held back again. So I classed up again. They came back. They were doing this evolution now. I had 2 more attempts. Went into the water, failed the first attempt. They pulled me out, took me to the side of the pool, threw me back in, and I passed. The final thing that almost got me was land navigation. I grew up in the suburbs. I'd never used a map and compass for anything in my life. Now I had to find all these like tiny little points strewn out across this huge national park. Long story short, I was the worst performer in the class. I almost failed this, and when it finally came time to test, I passed. And why do I tell you this? Because this identity meant so much to me that I was willing to walk into the next level of discomfort. It didn't matter what the task was put in front of me. I just did it. Life's going to be like that sometimes. We're going to be faced with challenges, and we don't know if we have what it takes. But take it from me, fail forward. Fail forward into the next evolution. Fail forward into tomorrow and see what tomorrow has to bring. April 27, 2012, I'd earned my Navy SEAL Trident. 17 years old, I'd been arrested. 19 years old, I tried to kill myself. At 27 years old, I'm a Navy SEAL. Now, BUDS was a struggle, which I outlined to you guys just now. But when I got to the SEAL teams, I just excelled. Absolutely excelled. I checked into SEAL Team 3 in July of 2012. And I won't go into all the details of all the successes, but I was ranked number 1 over and over and over again. I was given awards. I was recognized for my performance. My performance sucked in BUDS, but it was great in the SEAL teams. And I just wanted to go up and up and up. I kept climbing that mountain, and I got to the very top. There was one other place to go from there. It was called SEAL Team 6. This was the group that was on the Bin Laden raid. This is the group that did hostage rescue. This is the group that had all the cool equipment and that all the movies are made about. And I wanted so desperately to go there, and I knew that I had what it took. So I put in a request, got all the sign-offs, was ready to do it. And then 3 months later, I injected methamphetamine for the first time. There's a whole story and an evolution about how I got to that point, but the bottom line is, becoming a SEAL is supposed to solve that problem. The feelings of worthlessness, the shame of not fitting in, feeling like I was different than everybody. You know, the crazy thing is, I just wanted to feel okay about being me. And then I found something that actually did that. You guys might have heard of it. It's called drugs and alcohol. And it did something for me that no other achievement or anything else in the world did for me. Made me feel okay. But now I have a problem and a huge secret, and I'm putting other guys' lives at risk. We work with loaded weapons, explosives, oftentimes in close proximity, as close as I am to you right now, sometimes even closer. Imagine being around somebody with a loaded weapon under the influence of cocaine, methamphetamine, alcohol. Safety violations are a cardinal sin, and I was putting everybody's lives at risk. These were guys I'd served with for years. We had lost friends together. We had been in combat together. We had been shot at together. I'd been to their weddings. These guys loved me, and I loved them back. My conscience got the best of me, and I came forward and admitted that I had a problem. I didn't ask for help. I just admitted that I had a problem. Sometimes in life, we have to do the next hard thing, and it's going to have consequences. But that's okay, because if it's the right thing to do, then it's the right thing to do, and there is no justification needed for that. After 9 years in the Navy, 7 years in naval special warfare, I found myself a civilian trying to get sober for the first time. I spent the next 4 years in and out of rehabs, in and out of psych wards. I worked 12-step programs of recovery. I went down to Mexico for psychedelic healing. I did every therapy you can imagine. I was on about every medication you can imagine. Nothing worked. Nothing. A job didn't help me. Relationships didn't help me. Nothing changed. I kept seeking another problem or solution for my problem, and it didn't work until I arrived to that point that I opened up with to you guys. November 30th, 2017 is when, 2020 is when I sat on my bed, I asked God for help, and the next thing happened. This is back from my modeling days. I couldn't even look at the camera. This is my intake into my 4th rehab on December 9th of 2020. The voice told me to ask for help, to keep my promise, to do the next right thing. My whole life had been problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution. I never asked for help. I never opened myself up and allowed people to come in and to accept help in the form that it appears. That takes courage to ask for help. We've all asked for help. It sucks. It's really hard. It's even harder to accept help in the form that it appears. And this form was back to rehab. Everybody knew about it. But you know what the good thing is? I finally stopped pretending to be a SEAL. It doesn't matter. Nothing I've done in the past has any impact on getting and staying sober. It's what I do one moment at a time. Every single day is a series of decisions that I get to make. And just because I try to get sober does not mean life immediately gets better and stays that way. I'm preaching to the choir now. 2 months later, clean and sober, I checked into the psych ward again. Suicidality? You bet. There's a price that comes with addiction that we all know about, and we all experience it just a little bit differently. With methamphetamine, my God, I couldn't stop crying. I had no hope for the future. I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to die. So I asked for help. I let people know what was going on. They're like, "What's going on with you, man? You all right?" No, I'm not all right. I'm terrified. I'm lonely. My best days are behind me. I have no future ahead of me. Right before I checked into the psych ward, I let my family know, "Hey, I'm having a hard time. You probably won't hear from me for a few days." There's something about preparation and opportunity. When the time is right and when we're ready, Providence will provide. Maybe some of you are going through a really hard time right now and you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe it feels like you're on repeat and nothing's ever going to change, but I'm telling you, hang in there. for a little bit. Some people say, don't quit before the miracle happens. I hate hearing that. It's true, but I hate hearing that. I was about to throw in the towel, but then a miracle appeared. Actually, several miracles appeared. The first one was an opportunity to come here to Denver and do a brain treatment therapy. I'd done every therapy in the world by this point, so I didn't think it would matter, but it helped. Sleep, got better, got off all meds. By the end of 3 weeks, I'd gotten back into school and finished my master's degree. By the end of the 4th week, I'd gotten off all medications, and I've been off of that ever since. The owners of the company were so moved by my changes that they offered me a job. They said, you can't stay in Texas. You don't need to be there. Come back in here. And then another really interesting miracle happened. I got a girlfriend. Started talking to one of my coworkers. Next thing you know, we start dating. Next thing you know, we get married. By the time I met Lauren, she had the real me. No more facades. No more faking it. No more pretending to be somebody that I'm not. When we do the right thing, the next right thing comes about. When we're real, we attract real. And that's what this is. We've been married over a year now. And there's another miracle. She comes with this thing called kids. That's us. That's what we do. You guys remember that first picture I showed you? Mom, dad, kids. It's bullshit. It's a lie. Nobody there was happy. This is real. This is the real deal. It's what we do. We get together. We go outside. We eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It's amazing. My life is not perfect these days. Even this past week, I've dealt with suicidality. I've dealt with depression, anxiety. I have a fear of success and a fear of failure. But I also have the knowledge now that the way out of any one of these situations is to open up. Bryce talked about community. There is no replacement for community. And there is no better place, in my opinion, to open up about what we're going through than situations like this, people like this. What I hope I provided for you today is an example of what vulnerability looks like. What I hope I provided for you today is the hope to step into the next day. Open up. Find strength and surrender. The old ideas can go. We can transcend. We can become better. And that process comes for me when I sit still, connect to a power greater than myself, and open up to the people around me and just tell the truth. And because of that, I get to stand in front of you guys today, clean and sober, and God willing, 10 days from now, I'll hit 3 years. And I'm indescribably grateful for that. Thank you for having me.
I've heard Mike tell that story at least half a dozen times, and it's never, ever less moving. So even for me, it's just like, man, gets me fired up. We're going to go now kind of switch gears, get into some topics, get into some definitions, because I want to try to make it easier to talk about this stuff, right? And first, we got to start at a pretty tough place. If you go onto the CDC's website, right, you can find top reasons of death. Right? And you'll find on the CDC's website, this is very easy data to retrieve, that the leading causes of death for people between the ages of 1 and 44 years old are first, overdoses, second, suicides, and third, car accidents. All right, so this is why we got to talk about it, because we need to reverse this trend. And the only way we're going to reverse this trend is if we have the tools to talk about it. All right, so let's just dive right into mental health. So guys, give me a few examples of definitions for mental health. How do you guys define mental health? Just give me a couple. Self-worth. Nice. I like how simple that is. Commitment to reality at any cost. Yeah? Sign it. It's yours. It's a great one.
Like emotional availability.
Emotional availability, definitely. It's a great one. These are all great definitions. I'm going to add one to just try to have you can always rely on as an anchor to just check in on somebody more easily. Right? And I like to say that your mental health is your ability to be present. Right? And when that shows up in life and where that shows up in life is when you can be present, what you do very easily informs who you are, and who you are easily informs what you do. For example, I'm hungry, and therefore I'm going to eat. Action. After I eat, I feel drowsy, right? Being. If I feel drowsy, I'm going to go sleep. Action. When it's super simple, we're able to swing back and forth. But of course, unfortunately, it's not always that easy. I like to use a pendulum to show what it actually looks like when we move between states of doing and being. And as we get older in life, it gets tougher, and there's some mud that shows up in that track where we're trying to move between doing and being. And what that mud represents, really, is unresolved feelings. I'm going to tell you more about that because that shows up in two particular ways. First, the most common way that shows up is just sheer quantity. Right? Take, for example, I didn't sleep well last night. So I feel different levels of cranky, angry, irritable. Right? But I've been there before, so I know what I need to do. I need low-level tasks, I need time to self, and I need rest. And after a couple of days, I know that I will be restored. Right? The second way that mud commonly builds up is you go through something new. You go through something new. Let's say I go through something new and I'm feeling different levels of fear, anxiety, and stress. But I've never been here before, so I don't know how to resolve this feeling, and now I'm stuck being different levels of fear, anxiety, and stress. Unfortunately, life doesn't wait for us. Life circumstances don't wait for us to figure this out, right? My boss, somebody is telling me how I'm doing, and I don't know how to tell them I'm not okay, and I don't know how long it's going to take for me to feel restored. The world's just asking us to be normal, and this is when we reach for something. It can be substances like drugs and alcohol. It can be escapism like pornography, social media, video games. Something that just makes us feel a little bit better so we can project normal even if we're not feeling restored. Right? Unfortunately, when you suppress your feelings, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. Studies show that unresolved trauma, right, so a very intense feeling, when you are faced with unresolved trauma again later on in life, you end up feeling very physical pain. I'm going to walk through what this actually looks like. First, you go through an event, and now you've got unresolved feelings, right? The mud. I've never experienced this before, so I'm trying to figure out what to do with this mud, but I can't let people know that I'm not normal. It's too intense. I have too much to lose. So what am I going to do? As the old adage says, time heals all wounds. And even though it says nothing about being restored, I'm going to cover this up, and I'm going to let time heal this wound. Unfortunately, you've now stepped into a place called isolation. The most common refrain that people tell themselves here is, I've got everything under control. My habits, my coping mechanisms, the story that I'm telling others and myself, I've got it all under control. But this is the most high-risk area, because not only is the line between isolation and shame different for everybody, that line is completely imperceivable. All it takes is to one day look under that Band-Aid and say, I don't like the way that I'm healing, to fully wake up into, I don't like who I am. I'm not worthy of love. I don't deserve it. Doing what's best for me, let alone what's good for me, is now light years away. I can't ask for help. This is the place where I have battled suicidality. I have won battles and I have lost. I'm here to talk to you today about how to win through the patterns that I have seen and the people that were able to climb out. So that's what we're going to go into next. Very, very lightly, this is my pastor. And he said one of those super simple yet so profound statements that just really sunk in with me. Right? He said, self-discovery or self-growth is just self-discovery. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, that's great news. Because all that means is if I can learn to make meaning out of the mud, that already counts as growth. So then we're just going to talk about making meaning out of the mud. We're going to go through 3 steps. All right, the first is you got to face the truth. Vulnerability. It's a tough word. Mike talked about it a couple times. All right, but can we get a couple definitions for vulnerability as well? The truth? Yeah. Transparency. Definitely. Being okay being weak. Yes. That's a great one. Here, I don't have a definition to anchor. I just have a different perspective that I want to share with you guys. I really enjoy etymology. Etymology is the study of how words are formed and evolve over time. One day I looked up the word vulnerability, and I found out that it comes from the Latin root vulnus, V-U-L-N-U-S, and vulnus directly translates to wound. So when I replaced vulner with wound, I instead saw our ability to share our wounds. Right? To make meaning out of hardship, you have to share your wounds. But sharing today, gotten out of hand. Sharing today, we talk about the fruits of our lives, the outputs. We love to put that stuff on social media. And there's nothing wrong with fruits. It's just that we get tripped up over the fact that you don't gain new fruits by trying to purchase happiness or by winning arguments in your relationships. You get new fruits by being honest about what's happening at the level of your roots. How do you really feel about loneliness when it creeps up? Where do you go when worthlessness is at its worst? It's when you can be honest about that and make meaning out of that that you start to bear new fruit. That can be a tough, lonely journey. And step 2 here is you gotta allow people in, right? Feelings are just information trying to inform your identity. Those are the choices that you gotta make. Like Mike said, he makes every day. You have to discern those feelings. And to do that, you gotta find the right audience, right? The right audience is not somebody who's on your way to work and you're just telling them your problems. That's a cry for help. And frankly, that's sometimes a necessary and good first place to start. But the right audience are people who have the right context for what you're going through. And that takes courage. That's scary because the people who have the right context can judge you. And if those people judge you, it can make you feel hopeless. But it's the people with the right context that can actually empathize with you and help make meaning out of what you're going through. Before you know it, you'll end up focusing on healing, having conversations about healing, throwing out distractions about what makes that hard. And you'll be out of pain and back in the process of making meaning. I'm going to go off script here a little bit. I want to acknowledge the fact that all of you have done this. You guys have all approached to Elevate. You guys have all sought out a place that has context for what you're going through. And that is awesome, and that should not go not recognized. What you have to do now is you have to press on and be vulnerable about the things that are heavy on your heart, that are really happening at the level of your roots. And these guys will help you make fruit out of that. I know it. I've gotten to get to know Robbie. I've gotten to have conversations with him. I've seen his heartbreak over attending funerals. I've seen his passion for what can come next and how he wants to serve you guys more. Right? Press on and share with each other and your house managers and your leaders here what's happening at the level of your roots, and new fruits will show. I do see hands. We're going to have times for questions. I should have said that at the beginning, but I'm not ignoring you. I just want you to know we're going to circle back to you. Bringing it home, the last step, this should really be called trust yourself. The last step in making meaning is trusting yourself. Trust that you know how to make new goals because you know how to be honest about what's happening in the root level. Trust yourself and blame others less because you know that given the right context, the right people can help. Trust yourself to show up in new ways, not because your problems have gone away or because you've arrived at some idyllic destination, but because you have the confidence in your process to make meaning out of hardship. So we call this talk Uncover the Unseen. Uncover the Unseen is about uncovering the unseen feelings, the feelings that are trying to inform who you are becoming and trying to inspire what you can do next to get a little bit closer to that. We got a few things to try to help inspire that action and be with you on that journey. First, we made an app. We call it a social journaling app. And that's because we just try to make it as easy as possible for you to capture your feelings, to be honest with them, and share them with others. It's free. Check it out. Share with each other and the loved ones that are still rooting for you on your journey. If that's hard, which I know is a lot to ask for, we also have partners. Our pensive partners are people that have different contexts, right? Whether they're therapists, we've got gym owners, we've got community centers, holistic healers. They are people with different contexts, right? And just if you approach them and say, hey, struggling to be present, here's what I'm dealing with. These people know us, and they're awesome people. They'll receive you, all right? I mean, you're already off to a great start. I just want you to know that there are a lot of people advocating for your success still, all right? So a quick recap. Your mental health is your ability to be present. What hinders your ability to be present is the mud in life, the unresolved feelings. Growth is finding meaning and making meaning out of those unresolved feelings. Who you share with is who you make meaning with. So start making a habit of being honest and about your mental health today. With that, we do have time for questions. It sounds like we've got questions already. If you feel good about questions, we'll take them. Mike's going to come back up and join me so that you can ask him questions as well. But we also have like an anonymous online question if it's a little tough to just ask directly. So I'm going to pull that up, and I'll have that on my phone. But yeah, I'll welcome Mike back up here. Otherwise, thank you guys for your time today.